All right, everybody, welcome into episode 79 of Two Countries, Two Americas, All Sports. This is the first day of June. We're almost halfway through 2023. If you can't believe that or not, I'm Nicole, as always, from Chattanooga, Tennessee, United States, and joining me from Americana, Sao Paulo, Brazil, is Gustavo Tomazeli. Gus, how are you?
I'm great. It's Derby week here in Americana. I'm gonna talk about that later. Breathing Rio Branco versus it's my Red Wolves versus CFC. I'm trying to think anything that kind of compares to that rivalry, but definitely talk about some American sports. And as we are watching the NBA Finals in Denver, as the Nuggets have a 15 now 13-point lead over the Miami Heat.
Yeah, first time the Denver Nuggets have ever been in the NBA Finals because the last podcast we had was during their clinching of the Western Conference Finals because they finished their sweep. Their opponents, the Miami Heat, the eighth seed, took a bit of a harder road. It's like I forget what parable it is in the Bible, but like sometimes are given the tough. People will say, God, you gave me the toughest road." And the Miami Heat took the toughest road to the NBA Finals because they took a 3-0 lead, but proceeded to lose three straight games in a row, including one of the craziest buzzer beaters you'll ever see in Game 6 at home to the Boston Celtics before completely running the Celtics out of their home building in Game 7 to make it to tonight, where they are on the road at Denver in Game 1, trailing, as you said, by 13 points. Um, I guess before we get into this Heat Nuggets real quick, let's talk about the Celtics because we talked a lot about the Lakers in the last episode. Um, it just this with the way the East unfolded this year. I mean, the Celtics not being in the NBA Finals, not playing in this game right now, is an unequivocal failure for Boston. They needed to be in the finals, and to me, first and foremost, with their previous coach Ume Abduka, if he doesn't, do certain things, get himself fired. I think he definitely would have taken this team to the finals. The Joe Mazzulla is not a very good head coach. Lost to at least two games in this series. I mean, Eric Spoelstra is the main reason why the Miami Heat won the Eastern Conference Finals and are playing tonight. And to me, I think that's where you start. But then, two, we saw early on in Game 7, Jason Tatum got hurt. He wasn't himself for the rest of that game. And they just don't have a Robin on the team. Jaylen Brown isn't that guy. And it's interesting because, he wants a Supermax contract. He may go somewhere else to like the Knicks, for example, and try to be the guy. But I don't see him being the guy on a championship contending team.
I first and foremost, I feel like the Celtics ran out of gas. It's hard, and it's so hard to be the best coaching teams in four consecutive games. I feel like Miami should have this done in Game 6, and they kind of blew it at the end. Celtics have all the credit. They push it, but then by Game 7, I feel like Miami, their younger core and their coach made a difference, especially how Eric Spoelstra was used to that moments, Game 7s. I remember the Game 7 in the NBA Finals versus the moment, like I think Game 6 and then Game 7 versus the Spurs and all those moments, and that made a difference. But and the Celtics, I feel like their failure is not only this season, is for me the last 7 years that the Celtics. I remember it go as back as 2017 when they had I think a 3-1 lead. I remember it was a good lead over the uh, LeBron's Cavs, where LeBron was carrying the team. They couldn't get the job done. This was when they had uh, Kyrie Irving, and they were building a dynasty. They're not build. They were building a really good roster, but for the past 6 years has been failure after failure.
Right. I mean, they only have one NBA Finals appearance in that time. And of course, that was, a loss in 6 games to the Warriors last year. And Looking back at it, they probably should have had more, right? But on the other hand, you can say they never have really had a true superstar. Well, okay, I'll take that back. Well, they had Kyrie for a few years, but that because of the toxic relationship between Kyrie and the organization.
And one person that I question in during this tenure is Brad Stevens, because he was the coach. Now he's like kind of like a GM in the front office, and as great of a college coach he was, it didn't work. It didn't work.
I agree. He should. Excuse me. He should have stayed in college. I mean, it's not like he's done an awful job in the NBA. I mean, you fleece the Nets. Of course, you can give the credit to that honestly more to Danny Ainge than you can to Brad Stevens. And you get all those picks from the Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce trade, and it, as you said, they've done basically nothing with that. I mean, look at the Celtics and you look at the Nets, what they've done the last 10 years. I mean, yeah, the Celtics have an Eastern Conference Finals win. They do have an NBA Finals appearance, but that doesn't get you the trophy. And you just have to wonder, with the Celtics as they're constructed right now, can they win a championship? I mean, I don't think so. Like, even if they had won Game 7, I wouldn't pick them to beat the Nuggets because the Nuggets I think, would have the best two players in the series, and Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray. I think both of those players would be the best player on the Celtics. And I think when you look at the Celtics, we heard rumors all year about how the locker room had issues, and I feel like we might have seen that come to fruition during these playoffs. They didn't seem like a cohesive unit throughout this postseason. Like, think about like Grant Williams, for example. Like last postseason, there were times where he was brilliant. Like I remember that game, I think it was like Game 6 or Game 7 against the Bucks, where he had like 26 points. Like he was a very valuable contributor last year to the Celtics. This year, if anything, he became a meme, right? For getting into Jimmy Butler's face, for agitating the Heat, and they ended up blowing that game and losing. What was it? Game 2 was when that occurred. And like in the Game 7, Grant Williams only had 3 points in 16 minutes, like basically a non-factor. And just stories like that. The only player that felt like really elevated their game in this postseason was Derek Wright. Like he played really well, but who else on the Celtics played better in this postseason? And just to me, it seems like they need to do some serious reshuffling. It's kind of ironic when you look at the Celtics and the 76ers, two teams that went at it. We give 76ers all the grief in the world for being chronic playoff chokers. Celtics, frankly, are kind of the same. They're basically the pointing Spider-Man meme, and they both need some changes.
Yes, and I think the Celtic is more no, it's hard to say who had more disappointment throughout, because the 76ers had the trust the process, and it was expected for them to at least make the Eastern Conference Final, at least make to the NBA Finals. They couldn't. The Celtics made it to the finals, but they had to get a lot of things right to make it. So, and in Miami, people tend to forget. Miami's back to the finals. 2 seasons, the 2 seasons in the last 4, I think.
Right, 2 out of the last 4.
It's an accomplishment for what Eric Spoelstra have. Of course, keeping Jimmy Butler is a very deep piece. It's a very important piece. But outside of Jimmy Butler, there's a lot of undrafted and a lot of players that they don't have a big brand, or it's a lot of young core. Of course, they kept Tyler Hero. They had a lot of names from their 2020 finals appearance, but it's not like a star roster. And Miami getting to the finals again just proved that you don't need that duo star. Like a lot of teams thought they need a dual star to get a championship. from Kawhi and Paul George, LeBron and AD, now Harden and Embiid, but then was Harden, Durant, and Kyrie. Like, it's so crazy to think about that. A trio with Durant, Kyrie, and Harden didn't do squat.
I mean, it almost feels like that this postseason has been the true return to team basketball. Like the Nuggets and the Heat are the two teams that really have prioritized team basketball. And I know the Nuggets have Nikola Jokic, but it's not just him. And Jamal Murray just hit another free. Jamal Murray's been unbelievable in this postseason. And Michael Porter, you have Bruce Brown. I mean, the Nuggets squad is deep, and a lot of those players are really, really good and would be starters on a lot of other teams. And because we kind of got into a place there for a while in the NBA where it really didn't matter what type of team you had because teams like the Warriors had stacked so many stars that you couldn't really compete. But now we're back in an era of really good competitive balance, and that's great for the game. Um, and we're kind of seeing, perhaps maybe the downside of that in this particular game. Right now, the Nuggets are up by 19. And when you look at the Heat so far in this game, Jimmy Butler, he's struggling. He's only scored 11. Bam Adebayo. Now, I think I kind of mentioned this briefly in a kind of theoretical preview of Heat Nuggets last week. Just kind of going, since we went ahead and kind of assumed this would be the matchup, how Bam Adebayo's matchup with Nikola Jokic would be critical for the Miami Heat if they wanted to win this series. So far, he has 24 and 8. He's doing his part. He is matching Nikola Jokic, who only has 14, but he has 11 assists and 8 rebounds. But the problem is for the Heat, the Nuggets, also Jamal Murray has 24 tonight. Michael Porter Jr. and Aaron Gordon are in double digits, and they are getting it done around the team. Meanwhile, on the Heat, Jimmy Butler only has 11. Gabe Vincent's the only other Heat with double digits with 11. Really, I think the key three outside of Bam Adebayo for the Heat, you have Caleb Martin, Max Strus, and Duncan Robinson. Combined, those three players have 6 points. And those three players were super critical to the Miami Heat's win over the Boston Celtics. And obviously tonight they are struggling heavily. And that will have to change if Miami wants to have a chance to win this championship.
But also, can we mention how bold Miami was? Like, did you saw that according to the FAA, that Miami had a tickets booked directly to Denver and not to Miami before the Eastern Conference Finals?
I remember one of my coworkers brought that up on Monday about that. I'm like, wow, they're bold. I don't know if they're going to get to use those tickets, but they did.
Yeah, they had a lot of confidence on themselves, and I feel like it all starts with their coach. I feel like Eric Spoelstra and Pat Riley. Also, credit to Pat Riley. What a duo. I'm just sad that Pat Riley couldn't get done in New York. If he got the Knicks a title in the 1993-1994 run, he would definitely be one of the most legendary coaches of all time.
I mean,
Like,
I
he
think
still is, but if you
I would say Pat Riley, I saw a stat where he's been involved in like a quarter of all NBA finals ever as a player, coach, or like GM, which
but
is
I feel
insane.
like that but I bet for him that run with the Knicks and but didn't get it done. It still hurts him.
Oh yeah, I mean, like whoever gets the Knicks their title is going to be a legend. But I don't know if that's going to happen anytime soon. I mean, they're going to have to get a superstar up there in New York for that to happen.
But it's closer than 10 years ago.
It is, and they're
No,
closer
no,
than the
no.
Nets.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, I'll be curious to see what they do here, but I'll have to be honest though. I know I feel like I've doubted the Heat at every turn in this postseason. I mean, I think I picked them against the Knicks, but I've picked against them against the Bucks, and I picked against them against the Celtics. And obviously, right now the Nuggets are up by 20 here in Game 1, so I mean, we've seen some pretty crazy stuff this postseason, so this game is definitely not over. But I'd say it's more likely than not at this point that the Nuggets are gonna win Game 1 here. I think the Nuggets. We've seen them as a well-oiled machine throughout this postseason. I believe they swept the Timberwolves or they beat them in 5. I think they beat them in 5. They beat the Suns in 6. That was their toughest series. And then they swept the Lakers. They've been on it. They haven't lost at home once in this series. Of course, Miami's going to have to win on the road in Denver. Miami have been road warriors. I know they said in the first 3 series they won Game 1 in Milwaukee, Game 1 in New York, and Game 1 in Boston. But right now they're not winning Game 1 in Denver. Looks like. So I think obviously Game 2 to me will be very critical for Miami, assuming the score stays the same. They will have to find a way to win Game 2 on Sunday night because if Miami goes back to South Florida down 2-0, I don't see them winning 2 straight games against this Nuggets team.
So they need to steal Game 2 in order to kind of keep the final alive, because you think they're gonna lose at least one in Miami.
Correct. I think you got to find a way to get to Game 5 2-2, and then all bets are off at that point if it's a best of 3. But you got to get there at least 2-2 if you're Miami. And I'm gonna be honest, I wouldn't be shocked if this was a sweep, but I think they'll find a way to win a game or 2. I do like Denver in 5 though. I really think the Nuggets are just by far the best team. I think Jokic is the best player. And Jamal Murray has become the wingman that every best player needs. It's almost like watching a different version of like Jordan and Pippen almost. Or Shaq and Kobe. Like it's almost like watching a more modern day Shaq and Kobe. If Shaq could shoot free throws, ironically, Jokic just missed a free throw as I said that. Be basically a point center, be able to pass from the point, and just be all around just extremely skilled. I think that this Nuggets team has what it takes to win this title. I like the Nuggets in 5.
I'm gonna go Nuggets in 6. I think Miami's gonna give a harder time, but by the end, I feel like the Denver Nuggets, they had a better rest. That tenure of like 8 or 9 days are gonna make a difference. And unfortunately, Miami is gonna be a runner up again. I feel bad about Jimmy Butler though, because if he wins one of those, because he's been in so many good teams that from what I remember he never won a title, right? He been with Chicago, he been with Philly, he been with Miami.
Yeah, no, he's unfortunately just has never fallen his way. And I feel like he's always been a lot of good teams, but kind of like the underdog teams.
Yeah. I think the team he has the best. The team that he had the best shot was the Philly team in 2019 that was eliminated by Toronto.
It's funny. Like right now, like assume that he loses this finals. Right now, his legacy would be on par with someone like an Allen Iverson or like a Clyde Drexler.
Yeah.
That couldn't win on their own. Now, Clyde Drexler, he did win 2 with Hakeem Olajuwon, but he wasn't the guy on the Rockets.
I compare more with Allen Iverson because he'll be a great player without a title.
Oh, yeah. I think Iverson might be the best without one, or one of the best without one. Well, no, Charles Barkley's the best without one. Well, Barkley, Iverson, those are probably some of the best without one. Or like a Karl Malone player like that. So, yeah. So Heat Nuggets. We'll see how this series develops. Into the third quarter, Nuggets up by 21. So we'll see if the Heat can storm back and pull off a miracle. Honestly,
I think by game 2 be more even, because now that difference is home court advantage plus more rest days.
Yeah, and plus I think too that for the Heat, I think at this point in this game, I would rest players, just kind of concede this one, and be ready to throw the kitchen sink at game 2. I'd be ready to throw the kitchen sink at game 2 because you I think it'd be a mistake to try to throw the kitchen sink at this particular and the rest of this particular game. But we'll see what happens here in Heat Nuggets 84-63. Now, there's some other NBA topics I want to get to tonight. First, back to the team that the Nuggets beat previously, the Los Angeles Lakers and LeBron James, because after the sweep was completed, LeBron made some interesting statements that kind of potentially hinted that he was thinking maybe about hanging it up. Now, he has not officially announced that he is retiring, but LeBron James, he's 38 years old. He's just got finished with his 20th season. He's already, obviously this year he crossed the all-time scoring record. He's won 4 championships, 4 NBA Finals MVPs, just has every single thing you could ever accomplish in the NBA.
I think, I kind of disagree with Colin Cowherd. I think LeBron James deserved a farewell tour like Kobe Bryant had. I think it would be good for him. I think he should retire with a farewell tour.
Well, I know his goal is to play with Bronny, and Bronny is going to be in college next year, and then presumably in the NBA the year after that. So I think LeBron, he's going to try to make it 2 more seasons. And LeBron's still playing at a high level in spurts. He can still play in the league. Actually, I wouldn't blame him if he wanted to hang it up right now. I think his days of winning a title. Well, okay, I don't want to say that, because if you get him like someone else that could truly carry the load, then yeah, you could absolutely win another title. But him just carrying a team to a title is over.
The only thing I point out that I feel like he should retire as a Cavs. I think it would be better for his brand. He should retire as a Cavalier.
Yeah, I mean, maybe do one of those 1-day contract deals, because I don't think it'd be the right move for him to go back to Cleveland now. I don't think that team's ready to win a title. I mean, we saw what happened when they played the New York Knicks this year. They were not ready. Donovan Mitchell isn't that guy.
Yeah, that's true. I think it should be kind of like a 1-day contract.
Yeah, Los Angeles is where he's going to stay, because that's where his son's gonna be going to college. That's where all the post LeBron post playing opportunities are going to be. He wants to be in movies. He wants to be an activist, and Los Angeles gives you that platform. Cleveland does not. So I think he wants to be in LA. And the Lakers, I think they're going to keep LeBron for as long as he wants to be there. Frankly, he has earned that right. He has won a championship. I know it was the Mickey Mouse championship, but it was a championship.
I mean, for the history books, it's going to be Lakers 2020.
Yeah, and for all intents and purposes, one of the greatest players, if not arguably the greatest player of all time. So, I mean, it would be crazy if he didn't get a farewell tour. If Kobe got one, LeBron should definitely get one.
Yeah, because LeBron is more like the players' league than one team. If Kobe Bryant only solely played for the Los Angeles Lakers, why couldn't LeBron James, that won a title with 3 franchises, got a farewell tour?
I mean, that's very true. I mean, I think maybe some people are going to say, well, LeBron was a very polarizing figure, and you actually got the Clay Traps of the world who hate LeBron James, and they're going to say, no, we don't want to see him have a farewell tour. But those people are in the minority. Most people respect LeBron James for his ability on the court, and those games would get extremely high ratings.
And the tickets is going to be through the roof too.
Oh yeah. No matter what anyone tells you for political reasons, or maybe if they're an extreme Michael Jordan fan or something like that, I mean, LeBron is one of the greatest players ever, and um, yeah, whenever he does retire, that will be one of the biggest deals for the NBA. And honestly, it's a true changing of the guard moment for the NBA when that does happen. But frankly, I think you're kind of watching it unfold now because guys like Nikola Jokic are now the face of the league. We are entering the foreign era of the
Yeah,
league with Jokic, with Luca, with um,
Embiid.
Embiid. Yeah, so we have I think already transitioned into that, and LeBron is kind of the last guard of the American born domination of the sport. And of course now we got Victor Wembanyama coming in next year as well, who will be the future. And don't look now, but it's the 13-point game. The Heat got a little hot there at the beginning. They scored 8 straight points to start the fourth quarter. So Kyle Lowry, he knows a thing or two about playing well in the NBA Finals from his time kind of being Kawhi Leonard's Robin in Toronto, which is still wild to me that Kyle Lowry was able to stick it out in Toronto and win a championship. Because Kyle Lowry, before that championship, he was regarded as one of those players that like constantly choked all the time. And hey, you get Kawhi Leonard, and one in offseason completely changes the narrative. Now Kyle Lowry, an NBA champion. So, and now gets to play in another NBA Finals. This time, albeit as a role player for Miami, not a starter. But hey, he's playing in another NBA Finals.
Whoa.
Very underrated career for him.
Yeah, and I feel that Denver is the most deserving team to win this NBA championship. I feel like it's been coming once they got finally past you know the semis or even the Western Conference Finals. I feel like I think they're gonna win. Miami had a beautiful journey and as an 8 seed, but I don't think they're gonna match. It reminds me a lot of the Spurs Knicks finals from 1999 2000.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the last 8 seed that made it to the NBA Finals. For those who do not know, of course they got swept by the San Antonio Spurs. Tim Duncan and
Robinson.
David Robinson. So that was the first of 5 championships for the San Antonio Spurs. And kind of ironically, I feel like this almost could be, think about it, this would be the first championship for the Denver Nuggets. If they win this one. And frankly, this could start off a new run for them. So anyway, so we'll have to wait and see. I personally do not think that LeBron will retire this offseason. I think he will come back for at least one more year. I think, frankly, he'll be here for 2 more years.
Yeah, I think the theory of waiting Bronny makes sense. He wants to have that legacy pass.
And that's so cool because for him that's personal because he didn't know his dad, right? So getting to play with his son, I mean that's amazing, and that's just an amazing thing, Just from I'm not going to go down that road, but I mean just that. I mean that's just a great thing to see that father son connection in on a big stage like that. But let's kind of move to a bit of a darker topic here, and we brought this up before, but John Morant, the star, or at least currently the star of the Memphis Grizzlies. At this rate, I don't know how much longer that's going to be the case. So we have 2 events that have happened since our last podcast. So last week, John Morant, he started posting a series of really weird messages on his Instagram. So there were 4. He said, "Love you, Ma," with an emoji. "Love you, Pops," with another emoji. "You, the greatest baby girl," another heart emoji with "love you," and then posted a 4th one that said "bye." And when people saw these, they were wondering if they were concerned that he was perhaps suicidal. So literally, Memphis police went to John Morant's house to check up on him, and apparently they said he was fine. They literally had to conduct a welfare check. Once again, another Instagram-related incident for John Morant. Because obviously the previous two gun-related incidents were both on Instagram, and now this is on Instagram. Then, just a mere couple of hours ago, right before Game 1 of the NBA Finals tonight, Adam Silver is in Denver, as he always is for the NBA Finals, wherever the finals happen to be. He stated this on the Ja Morant situation. In terms of the timing, we have uncovered a fair amount of additional information since I was asked about the Ja Morant situation. We probably could have brought it to a head now, but we made a decision, and I believe the Players Association agrees with us that it would be unfair to these players and these teams in the middle of this series to announce the results of that investigation. And said that he will announce a decision on Ja Morant shortly after the NBA Finals is completed. So apparently, there's more stuff that we don't know about has been uncovered by the NBA, and they are waiting on the finals to be over to announce exactly what that looks like. That sounds really bad.
First of all, was a great decision by Adam Silver. He was the spotlight on his league to be on the court in the finals, not outside of that with a one-star player. And it's just I feel like he couldn't handle being a star. I feel like he couldn't handle be, on the spotlight. Compared to R.J. Barrett, the guy who was drafted right after him. He's been one of the main players in the New York, and his pen handle looks like very well. So it's just sad to see a great sports player, a great star unfolding like that.
I know it's watching a train wreck unfold in real time, and
Mhm.
I do think that honestly, I would the best case scenario I think is for him to be suspended all of next year, for him to get some serious counseling during that time, for him to get some serious help, and maybe he comes back the year after in a different headspace, in a new headspace, because right now the decisions he's making are going to put himself in some really bad situations that could make some permanent decisions for him. And that's something that nobody wants to see in this situation. And I'm just, I mean, it's just concerning, and it's just very unfortunate for him. It's very unfortunate for the Memphis organization. It's just unfortunate for that city. Like Memphis has gone through some stuff this year, and I know they were looking towards the Grizzlies as a source of hope, and now we've unfortunately had all of this occur. So it just sucks.
Yeah, definitely. And it puts a question mark on this Grizzlies run because they were the number 2 team in the West. They look like they're gonna stay for a couple of years. They're gonna be a title contender, but with this John Moran situation, are they gonna step back? They gonna you know you know kind of are they gonna still be a title contender, or are they gonna step back?
Yeah, I think I would expect him to take a step back. I mean, with as competitive as the West is, I mean, you drop 5, 10 games below where you are. I mean, you're a playing team. There's no room for error in this conference. Like, I would not be surprised if the Grizzlies are on the verge of missing the playoffs next year at this rate. So definitely a bit of an interesting game though here in the NBA Finals. He had dropped the lead down to 10, but the Nuggets have scored 6 straight points. It's back up to a 16-point game. Also, the Nuggets have withstood a Heat run. 7 minutes left there in the fourth quarter. But anyway, I guess let's move on to some college athletics talk, particularly college football, because the SEC, in my opinion, has made just an awful decision today. So they've been debating all week in their SEC coaches meetings down in Destin, Florida, whether to stick with an 8-game schedule like we've always had, or move to a 9-game schedule now that Texas and Oklahoma are set to move to the SEC next year. And basically, there are 2 different schedule formats. In an 8-game, you have what's called a 1-7-7, which basically means you have one permanent opponent you play every single year, and then the other 14 teams you play them every other year. And then on a 9-game schedule, it's a free 6-6. You have 3 permanent opponents you would play. And then the other 12 teams you would play every other year. So, like in the case of Tennessee, in a 1-7-7, likely your one opponent is Vanderbilt because it's an in-state rival. But in a free 6-6, probably you would have Vanderbilt, probably Alabama since it's a historic rival, and let's say Kentucky as a border.
Or Florida.
Or Florida, or whoever as a third. And then you would play the other 12 teams every other year. Most teams seemingly were for a 9-game schedule. But there were some key holdouts. Kentucky, Arkansas, and
Alabama.
And Nick Saban. Nick Saban came out earlier this week and said that a proposed free 6-6 for Alabama would include games against Auburn, because that would be the Iron Bowl, Tennessee, which is the third Saturday in October, and LSU, which is obviously has become a big game in the SEC. And he says that was, quote, unfair. That was too hard. And because it's not like Alabama has been playing those teams literally every single year for like the last 30 years. I mean, Nick Saban has won 6 national titles while playing those free teams every single year. And just because now we have 1 year where Tennessee actually beat Alabama and they couldn't stop our offense, you have 1 year where you couldn't beat LSU. And you got to think about this. Hugh Freeze at Auburn, that's a coach that's beat Nick Saban twice. Is this Nick Saban basically admitting now he's just scared?
Or he wants to trick the system to keep his status and his viability as long as he could.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so weak. Like, I mean, it's crazy because, like, he literally had a quote like a couple of years ago where he's like, we should be forced to play 12 P5 teams. So Peyton Manning's at the Denver game, by the way.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. Yeah,
shout out VFL Peyton Manning. Of course, makes sense. He's in Denver. Of course, the Denver Broncos connection there. So he's up on the other mountains today. Of course, they've been showing all kinds of nice panoramic shots of the Rocky Mountains. I got to get out to Colorado one of these days, but it's just so soft. It's so soft to be whining and complaining that your schedule's going to be too hard. And frankly, no one is going to be sympathetic when you're Alabama. You've had the most talented roster in the country for the last decade. I mean, Georgia finally is approaching you in terms of the most talented roster. But, like, literally, you've had the most talented roster every single year. And now you're saying it's too hard. I mean, you should have beaten Tennessee last year. Frankly, you should have. You should have beaten LSU. You had a more talented roster than both of those teams. But you didn't. And, it's just insane to me that because of this whining, that there's going to be a chance in 2024 that Tennessee and Alabama don't play. I mean, when you think about this, there's a good chance that we're going to not have at least one of the three between Tennessee, Florida, Tennessee, Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama. There's a good chance we're not going to have 2 of those 3. And there is the small chance, although I doubt it, the small chance that we have none of those 3. And frankly, that idea makes me nauseous. Like, I can't imagine a Tennessee football season where we don't play Alabama, Florida, or Georgia.
And when the SEC had to play themselves, on the 10-game format, Nick Saban got an undefeated national championship.
Yeah. I mean, like when you added Texas and Oklahoma, going to 9 games should have been a no-brainer, a no question. And also, too, here's the other factor, too. There's some sources are saying that the other factor in this is some of these non-conference games, like Tennessee versus Chattanooga or Alabama versus Mercer. And I get it. These games fund those smaller athletic departments. But you know what? At some point, you got to step back and you got to think about what is the best for our conference? What's the best for our game? What's more important, having Tennessee, Alabama, or Tennessee, Chattanooga? And I support the Mocs. I know for the Mocs, having a game against Tennessee is huge. That funds the entire athletic department. But if we're going to move to these super conferences and we're going to have 16 teams and it's going to be really hard to fit in all these games, at some point we have to choose who gets to stay and who gets to leave. And I want to preserve games like the third Saturday in October. I want to preserve Tennessee, Florida. Because I'm going to be honest, Tennessee, Vanderbilt, I mean, yeah, I get it. That's an in-state game. I just don't. That does not. I cannot accept that as the main rivalry.
Well,
Tennessee.
or if they want to keep this non-conference games, do you think they might expand college football to start even earlier?
Well, I guess you could. I
I
mean,
don't see why
but would you
not.
add it? I mean, think about this. I mean, you've already expanded the playoffs to 12. I don't think you could. I think that you would have to keep it at 12 regular season games plus the conference title games because you're already facing a situation where some teams are probably going to have to play like 17 games to win a national title. And because think about this, in the NFL, they play what? At max 20, 21 to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah, it's 21 if you 17 weeks plus if you go a wild card, then divisional round, then champion the NFC or AFC championship, then the Super Bowl.
Yeah, but because here's the thing: like we are getting dangerously close to a situation where college football could jump the shark completely, right? Because like the thing about college football that makes it so unique is that the fact you have such an amazing regular season, and that the regular season is a matter. Like when Tennessee went to South Carolina, that was a playoff game for Tennessee, and we lost in that game. Because that was a playoff game to get into the playoffs. Because every game in the regular season, any one of those games could destroy your chance of making it into the college football playoff. That isn't true in the NFL. That isn't true in any other league. That's why I'm not paying attention to the NBA in December. That's why, frankly, when it comes like the MLB right now, I'm only watching it from time to time because no one result right now is going to determine any baseball team's fate. But college football, every game does. But the thing about that is when you expand to 12, pretty much every team now is going to have one mulligan, one loss. And if you expanded the schedule, then I think you're running into a situation where you're beginning to devalue the regular season just a little bit. And that, I think, is a detriment to college football. And you know how you counteract that? By making sure rivalry games stay intact. Because no matter what the playoff looks like, I'm going to care when Tennessee plays Alabama. I'm going to care when Tennessee plays Georgia. I'm going to care when Tennessee plays Florida. But if those games aren't on the schedule, then I'm not getting the games that really, really matter to my football program. That have always mattered. That, my parents have cared about. That my grandfathers cared about. That my great-grandfathers cared about. Like all of them cared about Tennessee, Alabama. They cared about Tennessee, Alabama before there was television and before there was the internet. It's a matter of tradition. I get it. Sometimes traditions have to die, but you saw what Neyland Stadium looked like when Caleb McGrath hit that field goal last October. And you saw how much beating Alabama meant because we may have not been around since 1901, since the third Saturday in October started, but we all know deep down just what this rivalry game means to this entire state. And I know it means a lot to those on the other side of in the other state as well, down in Alabama. I know it means so much to them as well. And it makes me sick that we're facing a situation that there's going to be a fallout of third Saturday in October. Potentially. And that's just not SEC football. And that, to me, will be a jumping the shark moment that college football should really stop to think if they want to have that happen.
It's like you expand so much that you decharacterize your own product and loses the core value.
Yeah, like as cool as it is, it's going to be for Tennessee to play Oklahoma or Tennessee to play Texas, and that's coming at the expense of playing Alabama. Frankly, I don't want them. If I have to lose the rivalry games, if we have to lose those rivalry games,
Then it doesn't matter.
yeah. I mean, because right now here's the permanent opponents that we're looking at right now. So you're looking at Alabama, Auburn, Ole Miss, Miss State, probably Florida, Georgia. You're probably looking at maybe Texas, OU, because that's also too. You got Texas. I mean, do you keep them with OU, or do you give them back Texas A&M? I mean, you probably want to stick them with OU, right? So Texas A&M, we're still not going to get that on a yearly basis. Auburn, Georgia, the Deep South's oldest rivalry. They've played that since like 1896. We're not going to play that anymore every single year. Yeah, just screw Auburn, Georgia. Screw that rivalry. I mean, LSU, Texas A&M. I mean, is that really the game that we need? I mean, Arkansas, Missouri. Again, is that the game that we truly need every single year? I mean, South Carolina, Kentucky. Is that a game you need every single year? I mean, this is just bad. I'm sorry, this is just a bad thing for the conference to be sticking with 8 games. And I hope that they move to 9 games in 2025, or otherwise, if they are seriously sticking with 8 games in the future, and we have to go into a fall without some of these big rivalry games, I'm sorry, it's just bad for the product. It's so bad because those games mean too much to these fan bases.
Definitely, and it's just makes it takes the essence of, because there's something I've been appealing here in Brazil that I think makes a lot of sense in the US. Rivalries is what makes you root deeper into your team. Like, for example, Rio Branco here in Americana have not played União Barbarense for 2 seasons, and now we get to play them twice this year, and looks like it's going to be only that. It just feels different. The tournament here, the Paulista Under 23 felt different this year. Those 2 games felt different. It makes me chill. It makes me excited for Saturday. If you lose that kind of excitement for college football, that is something deeply rooted into rivalries, more than the NFL, more than the NBA, more than the MLB, then you lose what fans die to see.
Yeah, it's just hard for me to wrap my hand around it. It really is.
It is. It is.
It's such a short-sighted decision. And the fact that the majority of the conference wants this, but we have just a handful of teams that quote unquote don't want a tougher schedule.
Nick ended the game in Denver. The Nuggets beat the Heat 104-93.
There you go. So the Heat definitely tried. They won that 4th quarter, but they didn't win it enough. So Nuggets up 1-0. We'll see if the Heat can come back in game 2. As I said earlier, I think that's a do or die for the Miami Heat. I think that is just, they need to win that game. But anyway, so I think it's an awful move for the SEC. Hopefully they change their minds down the road. And really, honestly, I think you're going to have to see a year without Tennessee, Alabama, Tennessee, Georgia, Tennessee, Florida before people really realize the gravity of the situation here. I mean, and it's not just for Tennessee. Like, I think if I were Auburn or Georgia, I would be mad. Like, Auburn, Georgia is an important game. Alabama, LSU is an important game. Arkansas, Texas A&M has grown into a very important game. There are so like LSU, Ole Miss. That's a historic rivalry. The Magnolia Bowl. I could go on and on about the rivalries in this conference that matter. I mean, Florida LSU has been in a very important game year after year after year. These are all games that we are not going to get anymore on an annual basis. Just so we could get Texas or Oklahoma to show up every couple of years. And I know those are going to be great games, but maybe college football is one of those things that, because I'm not a very conservative person, but maybe this is where I tend to be a bit more traditionalist. But we'll see how it goes out.
And it should be because when Texas and Oklahoma came to the SEC, you had the hope that was like, okay, now we have more teams in our conference. We're going to have to limit the non-conference, aka scheduling Panera Bread kind of deals. But I think you either liking scheduling, games outside for the money grab, or you just like the easy games because you help the little guy, but you also take a break.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking about this on the Big Ten because I'm curious to see how they handle it because I know they're already at a 9-game anyway. But when USC and UCLA show up, talking about destroying traditions, when they show up, man, it is about to be a very unrecognizable sport. I mean, obviously, as long as the products go in the court, then there's going to be an audience. But man, it feels like the soul is being ripped out on multiple fronts. But hey, the world always evolves, and we'll just have to evolve with it. But I'll be very sad when I see a Tennessee football schedule and our biggest rivals aren't on it because, it ain't a rivalry if you're not playing them. It's like Georgia, Alabama. Like, yeah, those two fan bases are already talking a lot to each other, but you don't play every year. So, all right, but on more positive news, the Lady Vols, the softball team, they have made it to the College World Series. They swept Texas last week, and today in Game 1 in Oklahoma City, they dominated Alabama 10-5, and they're going to play the number 1 seed Oklahoma, a perennial national power, on Saturday. I'll be curious to see if they can overcome the Sooners because if they can beat Oklahoma, then they can beat anyone if you can beat Oklahoma.
Yeah, definitely. And wasn't like Oklahoma that beat them in 2013.
Yes.
So they had a little history behind that game.
Oh yeah, I mean Oklahoma has been just unbelievable in softball forever. I mean they've won it. It seems like basically every year. It seems like, or at least they're there.
Yeah,
because like they have championships. They're back-to-back champions right now, and they have 6 titles since 2000.
So if Tennessee can beat them, it just showed there for like true real contender.
Oh, absolutely. And also, too, we do have to remember this will be a road game for Tennessee and Oklahoma City. So that's the thing that kind of sucks about the College World Series is that it's always in Oklahoma. Because think about Oklahoma State is also in the College World Series as well. So it feels like softball is very Oklahoma centric, but it's one of those things. Can they find a way to overcome that on the road? We'll have to find out. Shout out to Ashley Rogers, local player here from the lower Tennessee Valley here from Meggins County. So we're definitely following them to see what they do against Oklahoma on Saturday. All right, baseballs. Obviously they've been up and down this year. They were one and done in the SEC tournament. Lost to Texas A&M. And they ended up getting a 2 seed in Clemson's regional. They are in northwestern South Carolina now, getting ready to take on Charlotte, the 49ers. Of course, I remember the last time we played Charlotte in the sport was football, and probably one of the most boring games you'll ever see.
14-7.
Yeah, it was.
I was there on that game with my ex-girlfriend. Jesus Christ. I remember that I stayed for like the halftime, then I left. I kind of regret it, but then when remember being on like a wings restaurant, Big Cajunas, and watching the rest of the game on TV, and I was like, "Thank God I left." I remember that
I
game.
was in band, so I couldn't leave. Um, so I almost fell asleep while in band. I mean that because I think Jared Garantano had something like 90 passing yards or something. Hold on, I gotta look this up. Tennessee, Charlotte, because it was what 2018 we played this game.
Yeah,
Like it had to be like, oh that's right, because we were trying to get into a bowl game. So Jared Garantano, that game was 16 to 21, 172, one touchdown. Oh my gosh. I can't believe that this is what like okay, listen to the Russian stats in this game. Jeremy Banks was our leading rusher in this game. Jeremy Banks, who ended up becoming our lead like defensive player last year. 11 carries for 24 yards. Tim Jordan, that's the name I haven't thought of in a long time. 4 carries for 18 yards. Carlin Phil's Ame, 1 carry for 10 yards. Madre London, 2 carries for 3 yards. Ty Chandler, 2 carries for -1. I mean, oh my goodness. It's and then you look at the receiving core and you had like Joshua Palmer, NFL player. You had only 4 catches for 71 yards. Marquez Callaway, another NFL player, 3 catches for 30 yards. I mean, the gross misuse of talent on that team, when you look at it, is
was
just
the beginning of Pruitt era, but still the some leftovers of uh, the
much.
Butch Jones era.
Oh man, and just looking at the defense too. I mean, you have Daryl Taylor, you had Shy Tuttle, Bryce Thompson, Alante Taylor. I mean, you had players on that team. You had players, and just they were so bad, just so bad, man.
Wow, it takes real perspective when you go back and remember one of those games.
I mean, so literally, so we scored 2 touchdowns in the first quarter. They scored a field goal in the second quarter, and there were no more scoring.
Yeah, that's why I left on halftime. I remember I left at halftime 14-7. Then nothing happened.
I'm trying to think, what did we? I guess that was homecoming, so we did like a homecoming show. But
Yeah, it was like early November.
yeah, God, that was. Uh,
Oh my god.
See, I feel like I've erased a lot of that from my mind because of just how unmemorable it was.
Like I know you're kind of deviating the point, but like that's what I feel like Pruitt era was. I know we had that run in 2019 by the end, but there was a lot of easy game. But the Pruitt era was so meh.
Yeah, so forgettable. Like, I mean, there's no true. I mean, the best performance in 3 years was probably Auburn in 2018, and
And it was like more like a demerit from Auburn than like a great performance by Tennessee.
yeah, yeah, there really were no great performances by Tennessee in those 3 years. Um, so anyway, on baseball, it really it's going to be fascinating because baseball, they're 4-12 on the road this year, but they did in their last road series get the win over South Carolina, ironically, as they go back to South Carolina. Going to be crazy if they win in Clemson. They're kind of the anti-football team because Tennessee football went down to South Carolina, kind of melted down, but baseball they can't win anywhere else in the country but in South Carolina. Could they keep it going this weekend? Because they have the talent to do it. I think easily. They're a more talented roster than Clemson. They're more talented roster than Charlotte. The only thing is, can their pitching hold up? Can their discipline hold up? Because I think when you look back at last year against Notre Dame, I just think they made some silly mistakes in that series that ended up playing right into the hands of Notre Dame. And I think, if you want to win on the road, you're going to have to find a way to do that. I think they can do it, but it's going to be difficult.
Yeah, and it was weird that even though SEC had a record of regional hosting, I think it was like down to 8. I think that SEC deserved it to host, but they ended up not hosting.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't win a ton on the road, and I get that, and they didn't really win anything out of conference either because they basically lost all their major non-conference games. Um, so I think they probably deserved not hosting here, and they're going to have a much harder road. But hey, Ole Miss last year, the national champions, they also were not on the road, so we'll just have to wait and see. And I will have to admit, compared to last year, I did not pay that much attention to the rest of college baseball. So I'm not 100% sure who's going to win it all, but hopefully the Vols can find a way. All right. We're going to add something there.
No, no, no. Go ahead, go ahead. I was like, no, no. Go ahead.
Okay. I do want to get into some racing real quick because this past weekend was Memorial Day weekend here in the U.S. And we had some pretty interesting racing here in America. Of course, we had the Indianapolis 500 and the Coca-Cola 600 in Charlotte. First, the Indy 500. This one was a wild race. And I almost kind of think IndyCar dodged a really major bullet. Let's call
Oh,
it
it
a
did.
tire bullet on Sunday for multiple reasons. So obviously, literally, when God, I forgot who even crashed. Anyway, it was Kyle Kirkwood who he had gotten a hit and his tire fell and his tire flew off. Oh yeah, Felix Rovenquist. He had hit the wall and he started spinning, and Kyle Kirkwood hit him, and his tire flew off and flew over the grandstand, barely over the catch fence, and barely missed the grandstand. I watched it live, I thought it had hit somebody, but it had hit
Only
a
hit one car, right? It was a pretty
yeah.
damage.
Yeah, I mean, it destroyed the car. I mean, just imagine a heavy tire going through anything at 200 miles an hour. I mean, how devastating that is. And what's scary is this wouldn't have been the first time this has happened in IndyCar. Back in the late 90s, you had incidents at Michigan and an incident at Charlotte. Two separate incidents in the course of like 6 months that killed collectively, I believe, 6 different people with tires flying over catch fences. And this caused catch fences to be universally raised to attempt to prevent more incidents like that from occurring. So this was definitely a freak incident that occurred. And Indianapolis got very lucky. They just, like, this would have been a much different conversation this week if that tire had hit somebody and had killed, because it would have not just stopped at one person, it would have killed a couple of people if it had just been on a slightly different trajectory. To me, it's almost similar to in NASCAR to the 1987 Talladega race, where Bobby Allison had blown a tire and his car had went airborne, and it was basically almost went for the catch fence, but due to the car kind of hitting the wall at such an angle, it kept it on the racetrack and it prevented a massive tragedy. Um, But with that in mind, it boggles the mind why IndyCar handled the race like they did. And it's controversial because you have two different camps. Because basically, there were 3 cautions in the last 20 laps of this race. And unlike in NASCAR, they don't have overtime. They don't have a green, white, checkered finish. When the race reaches 200 laps, 500 miles, that's it. And I've talked about this topic before, how I have liked how IndyCar does that. Like, the 500 Indianapolis 500 should be 500 miles. Like the Daytona 500 basically is never 500 miles anymore. It's like the Daytona 530. It's insane. Uh, but literally, they red flagged the race 3 separate times in this race. And the first time it made sense. There was a car upside down. You had to fix that. Red flag made sense there. But the second time, there was a crash right at the start finish line. No need to red flag it, but they did. The third time, they red flagged it again for another minor crash. And no reason other than to ensure a green flag finish, a 1-lap shootout, which we saw Marcus Ericsson, who probably should have won this race, for the second straight year in a row. He gets passed by Joseph Newgarden for his first ever Indianapolis win. And, when NASCAR does these overtime restarts, you almost know 9 out of 10 times it's going to end up in a big crash. But they're stock cars. So more likely than not they're going to be fine. But with Indy cars, I kind of have pause putting those drivers in just egregiously dangerous situations like that. Because I feel like IndyCar should be much more selective in the amount of danger they put their drivers in. Because we've seen in the past 10, 15 years what happens when IndyCar pushes the limits too far. Like I think about Dan Weldon at Las Vegas. When you put too many cars in a bad situation, what can happen? And I think even with the Halos, they need to be more selective how they do this. I think they're disregarding safety, and they got very lucky on Sunday. But if they do more stuff like that in the future, something bad could happen.
Yeah, definitely have to worry about the safety concern about racing. Definitely, it's something important to be mindful of. But that doesn't take the joy of Joseph Newgarden win. I was hoping Elio Castroneves got the win, but congratulations to Joseph.
Yeah, I don't think Castroneves was racing in this one. Oh, yeah, he was. He was. And also shout out to Tony Kanaan. Tony Kanaan's been a long time racer as well. He has an Indy 500. And he says this was his last one as well. So, Brazilians have had a nice run in IndyCar because Heli Castroneves is 4, and then Kanaan has his as well. So, maybe Brazil might be the most successful foreign country in IndyCar this millennium. Since
you also had Gilles de Ferran, Emerson Fittipaldi. I mean, Indy and Brazilians go hand in hand.
Oh, absolutely.
I still hope one day they come back to Sao Paulo Indy 300.
Yeah, absolutely. The happy trails, though, to Tony Kanaan. Now, Coke 600 down in Charlotte. They dealt with rain and mist all weekend in Charlotte. So they had to actually push this one back to Memorial Day. And this was a wild race. So first and foremost, the winner of the race was Ryan Blaney. That was his first points win in 59 races, all the way back to August of 2021 in Daytona. And Ryan Blaney's car owner, is Roger Penske, who also owns the car of Joseph Newgarden. And Roger Penske owns the IndyCar series. So Roger Penske is the first owner ever to win both the Indianapolis 500 and the Coca-Cola 600 in the same year, the same weekend. So congratulations to him. That's one hell of an accomplishment for Roger Penske. And Ryan Blaney, I mean, that was a great performance by him. He led, I think, like 140, 150 laps. And he had the best car all day. And I think this one maybe establishes him as a title contender. But that wasn't the biggest storyline that came out of this race. Chase Elliott, the most popular driver in the league. Earlier this year, he had broken his leg in a skiing accident. So he had missed 6 races. So he had just come back. He was racing well, but he hasn't won a race yet. He was inching closer and closer to that playoff line. But him and Denny Hamlin, driver of the 11, kind of got into some on-track altercations, effectively, where Chase had felt that Hamlin had put him up into the wall too many times. So on the front straightaway, Elliott basically right hooks Hamlin directly into the wall and causes a pretty violent incident. And Elliott has gotten suspended a race for this. He will not be racing this week at St. Louis. Corey LaJoie, who normally drives the 7 car, will be driving the 9 car this week. And I guess, it's interesting because basically this penalty is the exact same as what Bubba Wallace got last year when he dumped Kyle Larson on the front straightaway at Las Vegas. The exact same type of crash. And I think it's definitely a fair penalty for Chase Elliott. And I commend NASCAR for doing this penalty because it would have been very easy for them to not give this because Chase Elliott is the most popular driver. They're going to lose viewers this week because they made this decision, but is a fair decision, and it shows they're willing to punish anyone, including their most popular driver. So I commend NASCAR for that decision. Because you can't just have. I mean, I get it. Sometimes a driver's going to wreck another driver, but like you can't have drivers intentionally throwing other people into the wall at 190 miles an hour. You just can't have that happen.
Yeah, you just can't.
So hopefully Chase will think about what he did and will come back a more respectable driver afterwards. Plus, there was a brief Eric Almirola and Bubba Wallace fight. So I'm not exactly sure why that happened. And credit to Bubba Wallace there. He was not the one who instigated it. He de-escalated. Eric Almirola was mad for whatever reason. Probably because Eric Almirola is completely irrelevant this season. It has not contended for any wins. And most of the time is even on the lead lap, while Bubba Wallace has his fourth straight top five. And to the chagrin of many NASCAR fans, not me, is becoming a playoff driver and a really good one. I told someone preseason that I thought he could win 2-3 races this year, and they thought I was crazy. I think he could. I think he's on the right track. He's getting better every single year. And Michael Jordan's investment into that team is just looking better every single year with him and Tyler Reddick, who's also been really fast every single week. So we're heading into that summer stretch. St. Louis this week, a pretty interesting flat track over in the St. Louis area. Some quick NFL notes. DeAndre Hopkins, wide receiver, was released by the Arizona Cardinals. He's kind of an open free agent right now. I'll be curious to see who picks him up. A no-brainer to me would be the Tennessee Titans because I feel like it's been a broken record at this point. We have no wide receivers I trust. You have Treylon Burks, and frankly, that's it. You got to get some more wide receivers. DeAndre Hopkins, even at this point in his career, would be an upgrade over anyone else we have on our roster. So I think we need to get DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah, I think that would be a no-brainer, especially how the Titans. I saw a stat that Ryan Tannehill had more receiving yards than any other Tennessee receiver.
I could believe that. I really could believe that, especially since he used to be a receiver himself. It's just I don't understand how you don't draft that position until the 7th round. I really don't. But I'm not an NFL GM. So I'll just trust that the picks they did make will work, except when I see them on practice tape with no defensive pressure, missing targets, and throwing into double coverage with no NFL pressure, not at game speed. This is unfortunately what second-round draft pick Will Levis is doing in practice for the Tennessee Titans. Lots of talk in the fan base. A lot of people freaking out whether or not he's going to be a bust or not. And obviously, you can only take so much from practice tape. But you don't usually see NFL quarterbacks missing targets in practice. You don't normally see college quarterbacks missing targets in practice. For someone who was drafted the highest second round, I expect them to hit their targets. That's all I'm going to say. As I said, until I see him on the field in a game, I'm going to hope that he is good.
But there's still a lot of doubts about him, especially how in college he underdelivered.
I expect him to be bad. I just have to be honest. I expect Will Levis to be bad, and I hope he proves me wrong. But hey, I hope I'm wrong. Anyway, I guess that's all I have for American. What is going down in Brazil?
Yeah, this week was the Brazilian Cup week. It was we had 5 penalty shootouts over the 8 round of 16 games. So that was probably a record. So Corinthians that lost 2-0 to Atlético Mineiro won 2-0. Was the best game Corinthians played this year. Vanderlei Luxemburgo seems to get a hold of his team. Of course, Renato Augusto coming back was a major difference. What a goal by Roger Guedes. I wanted to show him. I'm scared if I show the goal. I'm gonna try to find on the Corinthians Facebook page. I bet they have that goal because it was one of the most beautiful goals I saw this season in soccer in general. But was a great performance by Corinthians. I feel like now I think they're gonna be favorites to win the Brazilian Cup. I think they are now better than they were, let's say, 2 weeks ago. And uh, I, I just say I know it seems that but it was I didn't thought Corinthians was gonna advance. I thought they were gonna be eliminated. I thought they're gonna be eliminated, but Corinthians proved me wrong. Really
Hey,
proved.
at some point they were going to have to break that losing streak.
Yes, but they did on the right time. They did on the best time ever. I found the goal. It isn't the best video, but at least it's something. At least you can see because it was really beautiful. The second goal by Roger Guedes. Let me pull it up here. Hold on. Da-da-da. I guess can you see it right now?
It's loaded now. Okay, let me go. Let's see here.
I will make the screen
No way.
bigger.
No way. No way.
Yeah, he did that.
He did not just dribble that from the baseline past the goalie by
yeah,
himself. So if you're that defender, how do you let him get past that like
yeah.
that?
It was, of course, it was merit. He was beautiful. He was beautiful. Look at the announcer for one of the top radios in Brazil.
Pra dentro da grande área, ganhou a jogada, protegeu, ganhou o lance, soltou o lindo lance do Roger Guedes, vai fazer o gol, girou, bateu, lindo, 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 excepcional, 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 lindo, é golaço!
It was
You know it's a lit goal when they go through about 10 seconds of other stuff before they actually get to the goal screen.
Yeah, it was like beautiful, 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 mind blowing, beautiful, beautiful. Yes, yes.
Goal.
Oh, and then the goal, the traditional goal. So Corinthians advanced 2-0. Of course, Atlético Mineiro, I feel that they should advance. The coach, Eduardo Cudê, rested 4 starters and only put them on halftime. So, and Corinthians players felt disrespected for that. So they, of course, play with even more determination.
Hey, maybe that was the wake up call they needed. Like, oh crap, these people. It's like when Tennessee started getting scheduled for homecoming against other teams. Like, remember we got scheduled for homecoming a couple of times, and it's just like, really, we're now your homecoming opponents.
Yeah,
and that's just ultimate disrespect.
So Corinthians had a great night. So Paul advanced, but it was a almost disaster night because they won their first leg 2-0 on the road, and then they 1-0 at home by 20 minutes of first time. So I was even watching the game, then I switched because I was like, they're done, right? They're not gonna concede 3 goals at home, but they did. They conceded 3 goals. The last one was by the end of the game. They went to penalty kicks, but they won 5-4 in penalties. They advanced also to the quarterfinals. Palmeiras, they had easier task. Palmeiras won 3-0 at home. They lost 1-0 on the road. Abel Ferreira, another red card. Jesus Christ, how many more red cards he's going to get? But there's an interesting stat. Abel Ferreira has more titles than red cards. 8 titles, 7 red cards.
I mean, how can you even keep a player who's getting that many red cards?
He's a coach.
Our coach. I mean, that's even worse. How can you?
Yeah, he's the coach. He's so mad about the referee. He is thinking about on the road games do remote coaching, coach from home.
How's that work? I mean, I
He'll
guess
he'll watch from home and then he'll talk to his assistants by some sort of a electronic device.
Man, that's. I mean, he needs some anger management issues. All right.
Yeah, and talk about anger management issues. On Sunday, after the game, the Palmeiras tie 1-1 that has a controversial call. He was mad at the referee. The sports director of Palmeiras was mad at the referees and yelling at them. And the producer for Sport TV, kind of the ESPN of Brazil, was recording that moment. Abel Ferreira, Palmeiras coach, attempted and grabbed the guy's cell phone
Wow,
while they were in the mix zone.
that's insane.
Yeah, he later apologized and called to the journalist, but still, that's incredibly rude and
Yeah.
incredibly disrespectful when you're doing your job.
I mean, you're completely right about that. I mean, it's just a complete lack of professionalism in that case. I mean, it just sounds like there's just a lack of professionalism in general, like down. Um,
In Brazil, oh yeah, tell me about it. Yeah,
I
I
mean,
experienced.
I mean, you've been dealing with people fighting in your press box and everything.
Yeah, yeah. So I know firsthand about that. And just to wrap up Brazilian Cup, Flamengo beat Fluminense 2-0 to advance to the quarterfinals. Flamengo that seems to be struggling got a huge win over our rival that was destroying Flamengo this year, in Rio State Championship and other games. But when they mattered the most, when there was like playoffs in the National Cup, Flamengo got the job done. And when the game was over, Gabriel Barbosa, Gabigol, had a beef with the Sport TV reporter that was asking about if Flamengo has little groups that hate each other. He was like, "We only hate the press. We love each other." That's what he basically said.
God. I mean, Flamingo again. They're always starting some drama.
Yeah, Flamengo drum go. There was a term called flop press, which is like the Flamingo hardcore media. They're like pumps up Flamengo when they're winning and puts on the bottom when they're losing and starts crisis and say that Davi Luiz and Gabigol hate each other and they have little groups and stuff like that. And then
Sounds like
Gabigol,
Fox Sports Knoxville and Outkick.
yes,
See
yes.
football.
Yes, Flamingo coverage is like that. It's like, and there's now a lot of influencers. I think in America there's still not a lot about that, but in Brazil it's like a lot. Flamingo press conference. You see the names like now YouTube channel Paparazzo Flamingo is gonna ask a question to the coach, and then this influencer is gonna ask a question. It's like now it's more influencer than journalists that covers Flamengo.
And that's really a concern because, like, there's training involved in becoming a journalist. And
Yes,
these
that's something.
influencers, they're going to come in, they're going to ask really stupid questions, and they're going to, like, really make it hard for us to get, like, actual answers.
Yeah, and for me, what even journalists are kind of moving towards more influencer area to like they say what the people want to hear, not what's really happening or make a cold analysis. He wants to be this team's influencer. Everybody wants, especially the Big 12, in Brazil, like the four teams in Rio, four teams in São Paulo, two in Minas, and two in Rio Grande do Sul. Like they're all filled with influencers that have YouTube channel with major following, especially on post game. Talking about the teams winning or losing. And as I always said to you, remember when you're WTK, when the team loses, the audience goes up and up. So imagine for those influencers, they're dealing with a hard like crossing point. Like, do you root for your team to win because that's why, of course, you won, you root for them, or do you want them to lose so you get more audience?
Yeah, at least on either case, you are getting some sort of benefit.
Yeah.
I'm just curious to see how much more you see that in America. Um, because I mean, you have fan pages that are bigger than any beat writer ever can be.
I think America still kind of selects more who covers the game from what I saw. I don't think it has changed a lot since I left in 2021. because that's what
But,
made the big difference.
yeah, PR people work hard to try to control the narrative.
Yeah, that's true. But I think there's gonna be a point where people that have a heavy influence on a team start to wondering why I can't cover a team if I have more audience than newspaper or a radio station. Because that was the major point that those influencers say, hey, we cover this team, we bring the news, we have opinion, we have a huge audience, why could we be covering the team? And they got a space. Like, I saw firsthand how Flamengo, wherever they play, there's more influencers than journalists. I think Flamengo now, more, I think, kind of like the Dallas Cowboys, when you're the biggest brand in sports in your nation, you attract more people covering it.
Yeah, and you're going to attract some crazies as well.
Yeah.
Like do that. That's like I think about, I mean, I'm thinking about this in American terms. Like if the Wirehouse just let Infowars, you know, cover them because they have more people than a lot of legacy outlets, you know. But then if Infowars comes in and ask about like, chlorine in the water every single week, that does nothing.
Or even like if the like a Dallas Cowboys, like, some sort of a influencer starts to covering, like, he's gonna have, disrupting or kind of covering in a way that is not professional. I don't know. Like,
It's like asking, do you think Zeke is washed?
yes.
Do you think Dak Prescott is a playoff choker?
Yeah. So I don't know where the line, it's so hard to determine, like, you know how can you like, because in Brazil, like more in America, surprisingly, streaming and covering and broadcast, like, for example, for me to watch the Sao Paulo game in Brazil Cup, that was only on Amazon Prime. There was nowhere else. Only Amazon Prime was broadcasting. And I think streaming in America has not reached that point that they're broadcasting a playoff game in a major competition.
Well, the NFL next year, we are going to have one of the games on Peacock. So there is that. One of the wild card games.
But it's only a Peacock on NBC too.
Only Peacock. It's going to be only Peacock.
Oh, so that's bold. So that's kind of like
I forgot to put it in the American section when it happened, because I think there was just so much other stuff going on. And also, too, NASCAR, they've been discussing probably when their TV contract ends after next year, they're going to have probably several races just on like Peacock as well. Prime. Yeah.
But do you think there's going to be a point? One thing that is interesting is that YouTube, of course, the YouTube TV, but do you think there's going to be YouTube channels that broadcast sports in America? Like in Brazil, of course, Casa TV, is the biggest case of success of a YouTube channel. They broadcast World Cup, FIFA Club World Cup, and the Real Estate Championship. But do you think there's going to be something remote like that in America, where there's a YouTube channel broadcasting a major sporting event? Not YouTube TV, but YouTube channel.
I mean, we have seen MLB games on YouTube, and we've seen some other events on YouTube. And I mean, I don't see why not. It's like, if you have an antenna and you pick up ABC, NBC, CBS, those are free over the air channels, but you can watch sports on them with a lot of commercials. And that's the problem. Like, because on YouTube, people are just going to tune out commercials.
But what I'm asking is not about the YouTube, but do you think there's going to be a broadcasting of sports on a YouTube channel with YouTubers on it?
Oh, so like YouTubers will. Okay, so like, will YouTube commentators?
Yeah, like a YouTube channel, like I don't know, like
I
don't know what's I don't, on the top of my head, I don't know any American big YouTube channel. But in Brazil, like Casa TV, it's not there's a YouTube channel, but it's not affiliated with the league or YouTube itself.
I mean, I noticed there's several accounts that I watch now that I think could do it. Like, I think like a urinating tree and 5 Points videos could.
But they don't. But they don't own the media rights to show it the game itself. They do kind of like what we do in Brazil, which is the talk radio during the game. The broadcast audio kind of thing.
One day, what if they get a big enough audience that they're able?
Yeah, like a urinating tree broadcasts an actual game of some sort of a tournament. I'm not saying
those ratings would get busters. Or like, what about some of the NASCAR YouTubers? Like one day, what if they get to call races? I mean, they already do iRaces, that they call them, and they could totally do.
Like, for example, the USFL thinking about that, going to YouTube channels that talk sports instead of, some major network. That's it's so interesting. Like, I was talking this to listening, even one of my favorite YouTubers, Rica Perrone, that even though he's a YouTuber, he feels that he's kind of like makes it downgrade the tournament itself. But it's so hard. But because a lot of people today were confused where São Paulo game was. Like, on the bar that I was on, I had to log in with my friend's Amazon account to watch the São Paulo game because the bar did not have an Amazon Prime account. So imagine, the bars all over America have to struggle to find, like, how can I tune in to the game for people to watch? Because a lot of sports bar in America rely on that.
Yeah, and also, could these YouTubers have a full crew going out to broadcast these games? Could they hire a whole crew of cameramen and be able to operate a remote broadcast center? Like, can they do those type of things? That'd be very difficult.
It's hard to broadcast. Like, I know firsthand, like, and I'm going to talk about Rio Branco in a little bit, but the Paulista Under 23 is solely on the YouTube channel of the Paulista Federation. And we know how hard some games are in terms of quality. Like, some quality are good, some quality are bad. There's no standard. So that's going to be interesting. So last but not least, Rio Branco and União Barbarense, I called the American founded derby. Like, because those cities were founded by Confederates that ran from the Civil War in America, who founded Santa Barbara do West, and then they had a neighborhood called Vila Americana that turned to Americana, and then those cities, they don't like each other, and we are gonna have Rio Branco and União Barbarense. Barbarense is better on the standings on Group 4, 11 points. Rio Branco has 7 points. Rio Branco had a devastating loss 4-3 on the road when they were winning 3-1 with, like, the score, they were winning 3-1 by 30 minutes on the first half. But as we see in sports, not always the team that comes to a derby game with better standings or better moment always wins. That's what I'm hoping happens on Saturday. Yeah, so, and tomorrow is going to be an open practice of Rio Branco. I don't know how much people are going to show up because, it's there is like a working day, but I'll be there covering Rio Branco tomorrow to get the press conference of the coach. So on Saturday, it's going to be a big derby. So, Nick, who's going to win, Rio Branco or União Barbarense?
Rio Branco, baby. Let's ride.
Let's ride. Yeah. So that's it for two countries to
also,
America.
I just totally forgot. I didn't put anything about Stanley Cup. I did not. The Panthers and the Golden Knights. I'll go with Golden Knights in 6.
Yeah, I'll go Golden Knights with 6. I think they finally come the time to win. It's going to be Vegas' first professional sports win, first professional sports title if that happens.
Yeah, I feel terrible. I just totally forgot about hockey. But I was so focused. I was much more enamored by the NBA conference finals than I was the hockey conference finals. And once again, like I kind of said last week, Las Vegas and Miami, probably the 2 least hockey cities you could imagine. But hey,
they made it. They made it.
Yeah.
But that's it for Two Countries, Two Americas All Sports on this late night episode on June the 1st, 2023.
Absolutely. So for Gustavo down in Americana, Sao Paulo, Brazil, I'm Nicholas Hill, live from Chattanooga, Tennessee, United States, and you've been listening to Two Countries, Two Americas All Sports, the only sports podcast that only talks about Brazilian and American sports.